The topic is focused on becoming a media company. It wasn't that long ago that being a media company meant you were the New York Times company, you were the Walt Disney company, you produced media. That's what the focus of the organization was, or you were on the periphery doing media buying or production or things like that. But today, it doesn't matter if you're an energy company, if you make consumer products, if you make widgets in the B2B world, you have to be a media company. And this is the point at which normally I would explain exactly what I mean by this. But the guy who first said those words, that every company must be a media company, is a former Financial Times reporter named Tom Feremsky, who currently works out of Silicon Valley and makes a living with a blog called Silicon Valley Watcher. And he's been writing about this in his column on Ziff Davis, ZDNet. He has started a blog called Every Company is a Media Company. So I thought it would be worthwhile to ask Tom what this means. So last Thursday, I got him on a Skype call, and I recorded it.
Maybe 5-6 years now, when I was visiting Cisco, and Cisco were telling me Dan Scheinman was head of acquisitions and also head of corporate communications, which is an interesting mix of titles. But he was telling me, you know, we've got 200 RSS feeds, we've got all these blogs, we've got all this traffic coming to our News of Cisco site, and the traffic, there was more traffic coming to the News of Cisco site than going to like Computer World, InfoWorld, and all the big trade publications. So that already set this idea off in my head that, you know, this is a company as a publisher, as a media company, as much as anything else. And although Cisco, you know, clearly has the resources to do that, I realized that this was something that was available to other companies, and other companies would be getting into a similar position as Cisco.
Well, isn't that interesting? That Cisco was creating content that was drawing more traffic than the consumer publications that dealt with technology. And they weren't doing this by cranking out press releases. They weren't doing this by having product-oriented videos that focused on the features of their new video tools or their new routers or what have you. They were producing genuine content, the same kind of content that you used to rely on professional media organizations to produce and then include you in those stories. So the question is, why do we need to do this? We have relied traditionally for decades and decades on the mainstream press to cover us. If they're writing a story about routers, they're going to call Cisco. If they're writing a story about energy, they're going to call Chevron or ExxonMobil. And we're going to get into those stories. We're going to be able to get our messages out and do the typical measurement we do. How many times were our key messages mentioned? What was the message penetration? And all the typical metrics that go into communication. So why do we need to now get into this line of work that is really somebody else's job? I mean, after all, if you're a company that flies people around in planes, why should you be worrying about being a media company? And there are a number of reasons. First of all, welcome to the splinternet. Now, the internet used to be this great place where you created a website and everybody who had any interest in what your organization was doing would come to your website. But the era of the destination website is over. That doesn't mean that there's no reason to have a destination website. I don't want to be misquoted here. You definitely need a destination website. But in the early days of the World Wide Web, all there was destination websites. Because you had businesses and other kinds of institutions, academics, government, that had the financial resources and the technical chops to create web content. With the advent of social media, people have been able to create their own content, and a lot of attention has shifted away from those centralized sources of content out onto the edge where people are talking amongst themselves. They're talking with each other. And they're doing this over a number of devices. It used to be that you sat at your computer and you looked at a 19 or a 29-inch monitor, and that's where the content was. But now we're doing this over tablets. How many of you have an iPad or some other tablet that you're using right now? Right? A number of you. We have smartphones, and we're accessing content there. Anybody get the web over your television yet? Yeah? A few of you, and that's going to become more and more prevalent, and people who are accessing content on a tablet, on a phone, on a TV, are not looking for the same content they would when they're sitting at their desk. It's important to understand that the world of news online is different than it is in traditional channels. The story cycles are shorter. Something that may be a story in the mainstream press for a week will be a story online for a day. And then everybody moves on. You can see some of the statistics here. For the mainstream press, where half of the stories were still in the mix, only 5% of those stories were still in the mix after a week on Twitter, only 9% on YouTube, and 13% being discussed in the blogosphere. So it's this need for a constant stream of new content to get people talking. The Pew Project for Excellence in Journalism also notes that the big stories online are not always the big stories that you're going to find in the mainstream press. Over a 29-week period, a year and a half, 2 years ago, they found that there was only one story that was the top story in the mainstream press and online, and that was the unrest in Iran after the elections. Other than that, the top stories were completely different. There's also a broader range of coverage online. The mainstream press tends to be very, very confined in the kind of coverage that it is doing, the categories of stories that are being covered. The web gives you much greater breadth to talk about issues that, more content on religion, for example, more offbeat stories that are, they're going to occasionally on the nightly news, it'll make that one last item. If they're short of really important news, they'll do something offbeat. I remember NBC used to do stupid criminal stories every now and then. These things are rampant online. So there's a greater opportunity to get coverage of content that you produce that's in a category that you might not have been able to interest a mainstream media outlet to cover. Now, I know I'm going to hear from a lot of people who say, we're already doing content. We do the annual report, we do the quarterly report, we do video interviews with our leaders, we've got press releases going out, we do product brochures. I am not talking about press releases or collateral. I'm not talking about the annual report. I'm not talking about the corporate videos at the corporate presentations. Right? That's important stuff, and I'm not saying that organizational communications professionals shouldn't be doing this. Absolutely you should be doing this. Anybody who tells you the press release is dead isn't looking at the statistics of press release pickup in the mainstream media. Anybody who tells you a social media news release is a non-starter hasn't looked at the studies that show social media releases produce 4 times the coverage of traditional releases. So these things are important, but we have to go beyond this. We have to start to become media companies producing content that is the same kind of content that media companies like Disney, like the New York Times, have traditionally produced, and the ones that we have traditionally relied on to produce. Content does a lot of things other than market your products and services and address your public affairs and corporate communications obligations. Content can inspire people. Content can rile people up. It can reinforce their beliefs. It can manage their expectations. I'm not going to read this whole list, but content done well can have a profound impact on people and influence their view of you and your reputation. Not just the reputation from that really high level of, oh, this is a great company, the brand concept, that when I hear your name or I see your mark, I think well of the organization. It can actually inspire what people believe in terms of your position on a legislative or regulatory issue, for example, or the construction of a plant in a local community. Content can have profound influence on our various audiences out there. And in today's environment of content, collaboration, openness, and a link culture are the underpinnings of good content. Somebody was just telling me that for their publication, this is a mainstream publication that has a website, the mandate from the publisher is we do not link to other sources outside of our own publication. And I was going, oh my God, that was like the early newspapers on the web 10, 12 years ago. Don't we understand that there's a link economy now and that people value your directing them to good, useful, relevant content that supplements or supports or enhances what you have written about. And if you do that, people are going to come flocking back to you for more. You are going to become that trusted guide to this material. But it's also a matter of collaboration, right? And exchanges of ideas and engagement, where we're not just pushing content to people, but we're asking people to participate with the content. Sometimes in the creation of the content, sometimes in taking it to the next level, at least in a conversation about that content. The content that we produce must be shareable. And this is contrary to the view that most organizations have, where we have to tightly control our copyright and our trademark. That's wrong. We want to give it away. We want people to put this on their blogs. We want people to put this in their news stories. We want them to share this. We want them to talk about it on Facebook. Right? We want to get this content out into the digital space. A lot of ways to do this. Here's an infographic. Now, I don't remember the company that this is from, but it's interesting to see that where it is right now is on Scribd. If you're not familiar with Scribd.com, it is essentially YouTube for documents. And by virtue of the fact that it is on Scribd, I can copy the embed code and put that embed code in a blog post I'm doing on this topic, crowdsourcing, and that graphic will now show up in my post. Now, I could do a screen capture, right? But by putting it here where it can be embedded, they can now see every place that it has been posted and how many views it has had on my blog, on Deb's blog, on whoever's blog, wherever it appeared. They're now able to see how many eyeballs have seen this and make a judgment based on the nature of the content and the kinds of people who are following that particular blog or online publication. This is from the Intel Free Press, and I love this. It's right there on the front page. You can't miss it. It's over on the right-hand side. You are free to use this content. Copyright to original Intel Free Press content is owned by Intel, but words, photos, and videos we share on this page may be republished, edited, and reused free of charge unless otherwise noted. Take our stuff. Publish the stuff that we have here on your publication, on your blog, on your website. Take it so that the people who visit you, who will never find it on our site, can read this and get the message that Intel's products are being used in some of the more leading edge kinds of tools out there in the digital and technological world. Our content has to be open to engagement at all different levels. Increasingly, there is an expectation on the part of the audience that they will be able to engage with your content, that they will be able to leave comments, that they will be able to rate it, that they will be able to like it with that little Facebook like. And now we have the Google +1 button that's appearing on more and more sites right up there with the Facebook like. The new normal is I get to engage with you. I saw a study that said 90%, something like 90% of consumers expect your organization to have a presence in the social media space, and about 85% expect that you will be actively engaging with them. And it's not just them leaving comments, but you're going to have the conversation back with them. That's the new normal. This is a great example of transmedia, multi-channel, also recognizing that the lines have blurred between owned and earned media. I talk to a lot of PR people who say, I work in public relations, we only do earned media, we don't pay for anything. Those days are over. I mean, you have to be careful of the ethical guidelines and not overstep. For example, I was familiar with, this is a great example, not an unethical example, of an organization, a PR agency, representing New Zealand fisheries, who had been accused in a New York Times article of killing off the population of the hoki, which is this ugly little fish that McDonald's uses in the filet of fish. Well, the New Zealand fishery said, we fixed that problem 2 years ago. This population is on the rebound. It's just surging. And they called to get a correction, and the New York Times wasn't interested. So they created a microsite that set the record straight and then bought the Google AdWords, hoki, filet of fish, a couple of others. So the people reading the New York Times article who went to search for more would be very likely to find the Fisheries Association microsite that set the record straight. But that's paid media buying those AdWords. So we have to recognize that in the digital space where everything is sort of mushing together, those lines are getting very blurry. So for a campaign to launch the Ford Focus, the new model of Ford Focus, Ford ran a campaign called the Ford Focus Rally, and it had a variety of different dimensions to it. Basically, this was a contest where you auditioned to be one of the participants, and two of you would be put in a Ford Focus, and across the country you had challenges. What does it sound like to you? Amazing Race? They hired the producers of The Amazing Race to handle all the principal photography on this competition. You didn't watch it on television, though. It was only available on Hulu. And those of you not in the US, Hulu is owned by several of the major television stations, and they're using it to show old episodes of TV shows and new ones. It's another channel to get those TV shows in front of TV watchers. So you watched it on Hulu, but they also asked the people on the teams to use flip cameras to record their own videos that got uploaded to the right channel on YouTube. And they asked them to take pictures that were uploaded to Flickr. And you, on Facebook and on Twitter, could help the team solve their challenges. You picked a team to support, and at the end, the winners were not only the top competing team, but a certain number of the people out on the web who helped them interactively through social channels achieve those challenges. So as you look through it, this is what it looked like on Hulu. This is where you go watch the individual episodes. Here was the YouTube channel where you could pick the team and see the most recent videos that they had shot. This is what it looked like on Facebook, where you could interact with other people who were following the Ford Focus rally and the members of the teams. Same thing on Twitter. They were using all of these channels, each for what it was best at.
Focus Rally America, the ultimate interactive cross-country road race, came to a close on March 5th, 2011, after 52 days of rallying across the United States. With the help of their all-new 2012 Ford Focuses, 6 teams of 2 complete various challenges and tasks in hopes of winning the grand prize of $100,000 and a brand new 2012 Ford Focus. Over 30,000 fans at home joined the race by choosing a team and becoming a Focus follower. They answered daily trivia, completed online puzzles for real-world advantages, and helped their teams solve down-to-the-wire checkpoint challenges in real time. In the garage, followers voted on upgrades to award their teams and roadblocks to hamper the competition. At home, followers earned over 67 million points and spent over 8 million minutes watching their teams. With 8 lucky followers winning their very own Ford Focus 2012. With Johnny Mosley guiding the ralliers across the country, only 300 points separated first place from 6th place when Gray Team took home the grand prize. Visit FocusRally.com to relive the entire journey, or visit Hulu.com to watch all of this incredible adventure.
So is it marketing? Is it entertainment? Is it paid media? Is it earned media? Is it owned media? Is it social media? Yeah. And it's all those things matched together. And that's what we're evolving to in the new normal. The next thing you have to be adept at is mobile. And let me ask, show of hands, how many of your organizations are actively working on a mobile communication strategy? I count about 7, maybe 10 of you. The rest of you, that's the first thing you need to do when you get back, is to get your organization to take mobile seriously. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It's actually a topic for an entire presentation of its own. This chart is from Mary Meeker with Morgan Stanley. She is the great analyst who predicts most of the trends that we're going to see. And these 2 lines you see crossing here in 2014 is when internet access will be mostly on mobile devices and less on tethered devices. We are headed that way now. In some geographic parts of the world, we have already gotten there, where more people are accessing the net on mobile devices, phones and tablets, than on tethered devices, desktops and laptops. And that's a significant shift, because it's not just a matter of making sure that your website looks good on a mobile device. It's understanding what people are looking for when they're standing out on the street or sitting in their car versus when they're sitting at their desk with a 29-inch monitor. Another thing to understand about mobile is when you're thinking in terms of these kinds of devices, you have to think about the fact that the value of the things that people are accessing increase by virtue of the fact that it is mobile.